Hey, welcome back to the Shire. We have been waiting to get this footage out for some time, and this is just part one. This is part one of the Rolex bridge. I'm so happy with the way that it came out. I'm so happy to share the content. The kids helped me with this one along the way as well. So Air Racer and Gandalf the J are in this video. And without further ado, let's see how this Rolex bridge came to be. So this is the approach. We want to make our gantry appear as if it's a bridge, right? The more realistic we can make things. So what we're going to do here is we're going to take the plexiglass and we're going to create a couple of different points that are going to be roughly the same size as the gantry bridge itself. One on each side, probably go like this, because I have a reason why there's going to be some room in the middle, and we'll get to that later. But, we're going to size it up, and then we're going to come back, and we'll size it up on this side, which is going to be perfect for me. Again, I need some room in the middle. So the overall goal of this is to essentially create, if you were looking from the side, an H-like structure, so that we've got something that mounts on top of the gantry, and then, well, basically a board that faces in each direction. So something this way, and then something facing the rear. And so with some simple measurements, and then the ability, perhaps CA glue, perhaps hot glue, that's where we're going. This is definitely an experiment. This is definitely an experiment. Not for the faint of heart if you're not interested in wasting plexiglass. So let's see what happens. Well, that was a fail for experiment one. So in the process of doing this, there's something nice that you can take advantage of. So I've marked roughly just under 1.5 inches over, just under 1.5 inches, somewhere between, you could call it 1 7/16 if you want to. And then I'm pressing this down into place where my two marks were to make my straight line. But the nice thing about this plexiglass, or it's not really plexiglass, it's not really what plexiglass is defined as, whatever the heck you want to call it, it's plastic. And when you start doing this, you end up scoring up the edge of the paper and you almost find your resting point. So even if I'm not doing so good in keeping this in the same place, which I am right now, but if I miss, I'll be able to go back and find this spot later, because the paper kind of creates a little edge for you in there when you go to score it like that. So it's just an added feature. And these are Pony, those are Home Depot or something. I love these things. I can't find enough uses for these things. Mostly woodworking, clearly mostly woodworking. But really all I'm doing here is just creating a resting point for myself. So let's do another. I've now turned my rigid tool up to about 2. This cutter doing pretty well, doing really well. And the reason why I'm keeping this at a relatively low speed is because I want a controlled cut. I could turn this thing up to 6, and then y'all wouldn't even be able to hear me talk. But also, I'd lose control of the tool, right? Get the right tool for the job. This is probably overkill for what I need to do. There's even somewhere on this paper that's embedded on the sheet here, it even tells you the tool to use to cut it. And sure, you know what? there's many a scorer that has done it, but I don't want anything excess coming off of here. I want as clean a cut as possible, and I'm comfortable with this tool. So whatever tool you're comfortable with to get the job done is really what matters. And there you go. Nice and easy. Two more to go. Since I think this one's a scrap. I think that first one's a scrap. The one thing you must pay attention to, whether it's woodworking or other, is if you're going for exact measurements, you must pay attention to the width of your cutting implement, otherwise known as the kerf. All right, let's check it. All right. This one looks like my best work yet, but isn't that like anything? Practice makes perfect. Oh, golden. Absolutely golden. I've got just literally a hair on both sides of that gantry. And that is exactly what we're looking for. So I'll have some overhang here to be able to come down on this side. I'll have some overhang here to be able to come down on this side. And if we note where we are for just a moment, we're landing about right there. And then with this one hanging over, we're landing about right there. I couldn't ask for anything more. Again, there's a surprise that's going to be in the middle of this. All right, now you can see we have our two pieces that are going to be mounted on top of the gantry and a G for good. All right, we are going to now take our larger piece of plexiglass, and we know our gantry is 16.5 inches. So we're going to go 16 3/4 with a mark, but then we also need to decide how tall our placards are going to be, right? So, we have our Rolex signs, and we can put our Rolex signs on the plexiglass and see just how tall we want it to be. So when we take an example of one of the small ones and we put it over here as Gandalf the Jay hands me a sign, and we put it on here. These aren't necessarily going to be the right height anymore. These were maybe going to be billboards for around the track, but now that we're doing the gantry and the Rolex timing, maybe we make bigger ones of the Rolex sign. So, but that just gives us an idea. So, obviously if we made it double tall, which doesn't look right, so we would make bigger Rolex signs, but even if we just use that as an estimation, that's about 3 inches. That's not bad for having the gantry to be 3 inches. So I think that we should start by making it 6 inches in height, keeping in mind the kerf. So when we put this tool into it, it actually can be just beyond 6 inches. So I'll measure at 6 1/8 and make a nice mark in there so I can come back and find it later. And we'll even this off. And then we want to come in this direction, and we're going to mark that 16.5. So we're coming 16.5 this way, which puts us right. Ooh, whoops. Thank you, Jay. There we go. All right, let's do it again. Let's go up 6 inches and estimate that it's right about there to get 6 1/8. And then we got to come over this way and do 6 inches up this way. I think we already did the 6 inches up in this direction. Yeah, we did. It's right there. 16.5 right there. Just drive that guy in there like that. Okay, so now we can take our straight edge and we can actually mark this off. We'll certainly measure this for squareness in a moment. No one's ever going to see any of these marks, even if I put some deep marks into the plexiglass and I go beyond the paper, which I'm obviously going well beyond the paper because I'm scoring it numerous times over. but we'll check this for squareness in a moment. All right, so we come back here with our big level that does have a decent straight edge, and we'll try and give it a shot and see what this produces. I'm going to have to really, really find something to clip to this so that I can use my tool. I can use my vibrational tool to cut through this. All right, success with one. Because that is from when I cut yesterday. So now is when things get super, super loud. About 6 inches. That's about 6 inches. That's the right spot. Well, let's see what we can do. I got lots of it.
Oh no.
Here comes the cutting. Boy, I'll tell you something, hard to describe, but it almost smells like some strange mint gum. That paper just burns, and look at that. That plastic just burns against the edge of that, but of course it's like any other kind of plastic. Once it dries away, it peels off. Imagine if what?
Fingernails can do that.
Imagine. All right.
Dragons.
Imagine dragons. All right, folks. So we have our first piece. We have our first piece here. That certainly we can get rid of all the excess plastic. Now, I burned it a little bit, but again, no one's going to see this part. This is the part that's going to have all of the placarding on it for the Rolex signs. So this is perfect. This is what we want. And then we have to come back and then we have to cut it now to our 16 and a half. And we will sand it. That's correct, Jay. We will sand it also. So you can always sand it at any point in time and hurt Gandalf the Jay's ears. Yep, sand it down. Get rid of all those rough edges.
Nice and clean.
Yep, you can. It's not really very clean right now, though. We're getting there, though. We don't need this anymore. So now what we can do with the smaller piece now we can definitely do what I did previously. So now we can lock this into place. Not quite like butter. I did. Not quite like butter. But close enough. Plastic. Burnt plastic, that's what that is. That's just burnt plastic. And there we go. That's beautiful. So now let's pause for a moment, even though we're going to cut this in half. But let's go see if it's the right length.
Welcome back, trackside.
All right. Gandalf the Jay and Air Racer are joining us.
I just cracked my neck. Oh, that didn't feel right.
Now the rest of the world knows you cracked your neck.
Oh,
all right, let's go test fit. Let's test fit our part here. Let's see how the plexiglass came out. So
hope it works.
The goal was to cover the gantry and to make our way across the whole thing. And sure enough, we did just that. Exactly what we wanted. Now, yes, this piece right here is going to be a limiting factor. So the piece on this side of the gantry is going to stick out a little bit further on this side, but I have a plan for that because I want this to be on that side. We're test fitting, and yes, it's absolutely right length. Now, this little bit of the upper part of the track is going to be in our way, that little bridge before the S's. But we have just enough to come across here and clear it so that we have just enough that we can come downhill and put on top of them. So you see we have a car here, so we'll start to estimate exactly where that fitting can be. And we're not going to come too low. Obviously, the gantry lights, the LEDs are below there, so we can come across.
It's time to measure so we can cut the plexiglass in half. This is going to be amazing.
All right, so we've got our piece that is cut slightly more than 6 inches. So if we mark it just at the 3-inch mark or just beyond it to say 3 1/16. All right, Gandalf.
Where is this plexiglass from?
This plexiglass is from Ace Hardware, Stella. I did not get it from a big box store this time.
Ace Hardware. What? Wow. Ace Hardware.
They say it's the place with the helpful folks.
Wow.
All right, I did that one pretty nicely. I can see that one.
Cutting and chopping and marking.
Cutting and chopping and marking. All right. Now let's make our straight line with our trusty 6.5 foot level.
Why that large?
I don't have anything in between.
And now we're clamping.
Come on, Gandalf.
With the really long level.
But it does the trick because it's a nice straight edge. All right, as hard as you can, Gandalf. You shall
Oh, your wizard strength.
clamp.
You shall not clamp.
You shall clamp. Okay, let me just get these on here. Seatbelt tight. All right, and Jay, you're going to stand behind me since we did this at such an awkward angle. You're going to hold back here because I left so much of the level behind me that your job is to make sure this thing doesn't rock back and forth. Yep, there you go. Yeah, you can't plug your ears.
My ears.
Oh no, everyone will suffer from the plastic cutting. All right, here we go. And there you have it. There you have it. Good job, Jay. Great job holding that. All right, and there you go. So let's sand this down. A little bit of a quick tip when you're sanding this down. You can let go of that. No, it's not. Fine. Here we go. A little bit of a quick tip moment after we take the clamps away and get ourselves settled in here to do some sanding.
I want to sand it.
All right. Juliet will sand, and I'm going to teach her a technique here.
Oh, it looks like a purse.
So you see all these pieces that can be easily broken off because they just melted into place, and you can break these pieces off. Once that's done, as they go flying away, while you're sanding this, the key thing to do when you're sanding this, especially if you've got extra pieces that have come across and kind of stuck in this way, is to sand away from it with the paper, because then it'll draw all these chips back up to the top. Now in this particular case, before we even do that, watch your fingers please, babe, we're going to actually pry those pieces away because those pieces melted from the edge of the blade that I used and they got stuck. But under normal circumstances, if I had moved quickly enough, that wouldn't have happened. But I don't know, I got caught in one too many places too slowly. And so I've left a bunch of edge there. But now that the edge has been removed, when Juliet goes to sand, instead of just going like this over and over and over again, she's going to come off the edge every once in a while and bring up the extra chips of plastic to get away from the edges.
Quick tip recap. Shave all the extra melted stuff off and do exactly what Gandalf the Jay is doing to make your sanding better.
There you go. And now, when you look at that, you can see that she's not only removed the parts from here, but she's removed the stuff that's on the edges. So we'll finish cleaning that up and then we'll test fit.
It's time to get back to the channel.
All right.
Back to the track.
Back to the track side here. Try and keep as much plexiglass debris off the track as possible. And there you have it, right there. There's our first piece. And so let's go grab the whole entire sections that we've already cut that are good sections. These pieces are going to lay right here. And remember, I told you there was a surprise going in the middle. So Eraser and Gandalf, don't tell anybody what's going in the middle because there's a surprise there. You know what it is and no one else knows what it is.
Wow.
So this is going to rest right here. A little bit of CA glue or hot glue, whatever we're going to do. And there you go. That's going to be it. And then we're going to have our signs on this side. And then we're going to have our signs on that side. And then we'll take a look and see what it looks like.
And it's that simple, folks.
If it were only just simple. The premise behind this exercise, of course, is we had to predetermine how far we wanted our billboard signs. If you'll allow this to be the TrackMate gantry, how far below there we want, right? Just how far down do we want our Rolex gantry to look on top of that instead? So I've come up with 2¼ inches from the top. Well, first of all, since now we're going to deal with the real thing, this piece is as finished as it's going to get, and it's going to be entirely covered. But again, using this because it's super light, and it's going to do exactly what I want it to do, right? So we're going to just as small as possible. All right. Come down 2¼ inches. The only thing we need to make note of here is that we're going to go and place the bottom of this against. There you can see the mark. You can't see the mark. That's the problem because in the glare. But yeah, you can maybe ever so slightly make out that scratch. I lie. And then I correct myself because the proof is on camera. So we want the bottom of that edge, of course, when it's straight, to be at the mark above in both cases, not below. We want just enough for, again, if this were now your view sideways and this were resting on the gantry with the infrared lights poking out the bottom of this, you've created just enough leverage in all directions once you've sealed that off with both pieces. All right, here you can see that we have got our marks. We've got our first piece to go on here. And I'm just creating that 90° and really just trying to attempt to cover the entire line that I've drawn. And so I'll check it here. I'll just check it here one last time. I think eyesight's going to get it done for the most part because, again, we want this resting on top of the gantry. And as long as we're pretty close to square, I don't think we're going to run into too many problems. And that's about right, as this piece is 1/8 inch. Oops. This piece is 1/8 inch in thickness, so instead of 2¼ well, of course, we're landing at 2 1/8. So instead of landing at 2 1/4, as I was saying, we're landing at 2 1/8. Give myself a little bit more room to do that measurement this time. Very nice. Similarly, excellent. Just going to straighten this out a tap, just a tad straighter. Against it. There we go. So let's give it a shot. Picked up this new super glue that I mentioned. Amazon super glue. It supposedly is soft coming out, easy to bond, transparent, high strength, waterproof, and most importantly, folks, professional. For whatever that means. For whatever that means. But it's got this neat tip to it. Wish I knew other than the dog's face, I wish I could tell you what to do, but it's got this neat tip so it won't clog. This little pin seems to go right in the end and then screw on. So if nothing else, Loctite, I don't know, some other people, take notice of how you make your CA glue. Nonetheless, let's put some glue on the end of this thing and I'll see how it comes out. All right, shot number 2 is in place. Looking pretty good, folks. Let's let that dry next, and we will see what that looks like in a preliminary state over on top of the TrackMate gantry. All right, thanks for staying with me. Here we go. Here's the concept in motion. In motion? I don't even know what I'm saying right now. It's too late at night. Here's the conceptual component. And as expected, the vision is realized. That is going to be everything I imagined and then some. And that's not even 1/10 of the way done. Oh, this is going to be just beautiful. So whether or not you envision it this way or that way, obviously there's another one coming on board. Oh, it's going to be gorgeous. There's going to be Rolex on both sides. There will be cardstock coming all the way across and down on this thing. And it's just, it's going to be beautiful. Okay, so now here we are. We're back at the bench. Well, one of the benches in this place. Anyway, there's a lot of benches in here. I build a lot of things. We're back at the main workbench. Thank my wife's grandpa, my wife's papa. So this is a wicked one, by the way. Old school. It's a Waterloo. Got 4 drawers or 3 drawers and then a huge center. So the goal now is, this was 2 1/4, but now to here it's going to be 2 1/8, and then bury below. So we'll try and keep the glare down here. This might create a little bit of shadows, but it'll be less glare on the plexiglass. So what you can see here is I'm lining up the completed framework of the bridge. And so I've got a piece that is 1 1/4 inch wide, taped down on the bottom side, so I can just rest this in place. So you'll notice I haven't glued anything yet. So we're just going to come in with our best effort and just line it up directly on top of that. We'll do some eyeball work. We'll take some of our squares and we'll come in and make sure that we're at the right place. And there we are now with the glue in place. This was not something that I would have been able to show at the same time. It required my vision right over the top of this. So you'll have to take my word for it that I got it exactly where I wanted. But now you can see the end result. You can really start to see the framework of how this is going to come together. I'm still throwing around the ideas of whether there'll be a flagman box up here, so you can imagine coming from the infield, maybe entering over here, and then there'll be a flagman box up here, and then the rest of it will be covered. And then obviously the fronts and backs will be covered in green, and we'll have our Rolex signs, perhaps possibly a boxed off component right here, so there won't be anything on that side, just so that you have maybe a set of stairs coming up here and a flagman box for a flagman to be right there. And we'll have him waving the checkered flag or something, maybe waving the green flag. But in any event, possibilities are endless now. As far as now that we have the structure. So we'll take the structure off of here in a second and we'll get you a look at that on the track. All right, I'd say we're about, the way this stuff is. And by the way, I will report on this glue. It has some sort of, whatever extra strength bonding is supposed to be presented from it. It's all, CA glue, but at the end of the day, not all Cyanoacrylate is the same, but this is probably roughly 90% dry at this point, but just gorgeous, gorgeous results. There we go. There's our acrylic. There's our acrylic bridge. So I'm probably going to do some glue stick work or some adhesive spray to put my pieces across the front of it, but just super thrilled with the way that it's come out. In terms of the overall structure, it did exactly what I expected it to. We're going to hit the edge of this part here, but it's fine. And then anytime I need to remove this, even if we have an extended piece of cardstock that comes around here, bringing this bridge to a point down here at any given time, all I have to do is come in and simply remove the entire structure, and coming up and down, and then being able to just get my way inside of here and simply setting it back down on top of it. So even if I have a piece extending right here, I can still come straight in and come straight up and still deal with it relatively easily. So I am extremely happy with the design and engineering aspects so far, and we will continue with some cardstock and some printing work next. So thanks for watching part 1. Stay tuned for part 2, and subscribe if you like this kind of content, and turn on that notification button so you know when part 2 comes out. Thanks for watching.
If you don't subscribe to Hobbit Racing, I'll poke you with my staff. Pokey, pokey, pokey. She will poke you with her staff. Pokey!